Hi, and welcome to my carving room. We're going to carve a spoon together. I'm Kristen Levere, and I am a woodworker and artist. I've carved many spoons in the last 15 years, and they've become some of my favorite woodworking projects. And not just because they're short, quick, bite-sized woodworking projects, unlike some larger furniture ones, but I also think of them as sort of a secret on-ramp to thinking about three-dimensional sculpture carving. I'm looking forward to carving with you. Before we start carving, we need to talk about safety. So we're going to be using rotary power carving machines. Yours may look different from mine, but all of them have burrs that rotate. And a lot of these machines will have maximum rotation speeds of at least 40,000 revolutions per minute. So you can imagine anything that gets caught up in the burr or the rotating parts of the machine can get tangled and ripped very quickly. So if you have long hair, make sure that you get it back. You want to make sure you have nothing dangling like necklace or hoodie strings. And if you are wearing long sleeves, if they're kind of loose and baggy, you want to make sure you pull them up or roll them up. Or if you can, just wear short sleeves. As far as our eyes go, we won't be throwing off large pieces of wood, but even the errant small piece in your eye does not feel great. If you wear glasses every day, like I do, they should be enough protection for the project we're doing today. If not, make sure you get yourself a pair of cheap safety glasses. The sounds also add up. This machine, along with maybe dust collection systems or fans that you'll be using. So you can go hardcore with construction earmuffs, but foam earbuds or earplugs are just fine for the type of work we're doing. The spoon that we're going to be working on is long enough that we can hold it while carving one end of the spoon. So I can hold the bowl and carve the handle with my fingers far enough away from the burr that I don't have to worry about cutting myself. But especially when you're getting used to power carving, you may want to clamp the piece that you're carving down on a table or use a vise. And I will demonstrate some examples of that as we go on with this project. The main thing we have to worry about for our health and safety with power carving is the inhalation of sawdust. So the smaller the particles that you release, which we do especially with sanding, but also with power carving with fine burrs, the smaller the pieces of sawdust we're releasing, the more deeply we can inhale them and they can embed in our lungs. And this can lead to long-term health problems. So I take lung health very, very seriously, and I wear a half-face respirator every single time I carve. If you are just trying out dabbling, carving, you should be fine with a high-quality medical mask, an N95 mask. You want to make sure that it has a metal strip at the nose so that you can make sure you get a nice fit and have no gaps in the mask around your face. But for long-term work, you want a dust helmet or a respirator, something like this, with a good fit. You will see we are going to generate an awful lot of sawdust during the project that we are doing together. And there are many solutions for sawdust wrangling, and I hope you'll educate yourself about that. I'll show you what I do. I carve right in front of a desktop dust collector. So there's a fan that pulls the air and the sawdust right off of my project into some filters. I also use an ambient dust collector in my carving studio. These are the metal machines you often see hanging from the ceiling in wood shops. And what they do is they filter the air currents that are flowing in our studios, which if we do any sanding or power carving, carry these fine sawdust particles. Again, the ones that are most harmful to our lungs. And they will pull that dust through a series of filters to collect it and purify our air. Do some research to see what works best for you, but if you're in a place with a nice climate, you could power carve outside or near a window where you've set up a box fan to blow air outside of your space. And you probably want to add a filter to the box fan to collect the sawdust, so you're not blowing clouds of sawdust out into the neighborhood and making your neighbors mad. So we're going to be carving our spoons using rotary power carvers and Saburrtooth carving burrs. You may be using a machine that looks different from mine. Here I'm using a Ram micromotor power carver. Micromotor means that the motor spinning the burr is right here in the handpiece. You may be using a flex shaft machine that has the motor in the main power unit, separated from the handpiece by a flexible piece of metal. Or you may be using a Dremel type machine where you're holding the larger machine with the motor in it with the burr coming up. Either way, they all carve the same way due to the rotation of the burrs. But before we get started on this project, if you're not very familiar with your own power carver machine, I suggest that you do some playing around with it to understand how it works and to test out the burrs that have come in our kit. And I would do that on scraps of wood that you don't care much about because you want to be ready to go when you start carving your spoon blank. I do want to say too that every burr that you buy, whether it's from Saburrtooth or another company, will give you a recommendation for the maximum speed that the burr can safely rotate. You really want to make note of that. It should come in the packaging with any burr that you have. But if you exceed the maximum speed, it could lead to safety issues. For me, some of the detail sanding burrs that I have, if you exceed their maximum speed limit, they actually break apart and shoot parts across the room. But also, it will help the longevity of your burr if you use it at the speed that it was designed to be used at and don't exceed that. Okay, let's look in our kits. We'll have a maple spoon blank. This is from Ryan Suki of Another Piece of Wood. 4 carving burrs. First one I left in its packaging to remind you that every burr that you buy, no matter which company it comes from, will have a maximum speed recommendation. And this is just to remind you to make a note of this so that you don't exceed it when you're carving. So we're going to have 4 carving burrs, 2 of them in the green coarse grit, and that's for roughing out our shapes, and 2 of them in what Saburrtooth calls a whisper grit. It's the most fine grit, and we'll use these burrs to smooth out what we've shaped with the rough burrs. We also have hydrating wood serum and all-in-one wood conditioner. And these will be used to both preserve and beautify our spoons when they're done. And these are from the company Bumbleshoots. You'll also need a single sheet of 80 grit and 120 grit sandpaper and other sheets of more fine grit sandpaper if you want your spoon to be smoother. You'll need some soft cloths or shop paper towels for applying finish and a clamp or vise if you want to immobilize your spoon as you carve. All right, it's time to carve. Our first step is to mark off a do not carve area around the edge of your future spoon bowl. This flat, uncarved rim at the outer edge of the bowl will give you a classic spoon look. We're going to use a coarse Saburrtooth roto-saw burr to quickly remove wood and rough out our spoon bowl. The maximum speed for all 4 of the burrs we're going to be using in our project is 24,000 revolutions per minute, and I'll be using this speed for our project. I've chosen to have us carve out our spoon bowl first so that we have a flat handle area in case you want to clamp your spoon to a work surface to keep it stable as you carve. Since our spoon is long enough for me to hold one end and carve the other end without my fingers being near the burr, and because I'm familiar with my rotary carver and with the roto-saw burr, I've chosen to rough out the spoon without clamping my spoon blank. I'm resting my spoon on a pillow to raise it off of my work table so I can have better access and better approach angles to the spoon bowl, and so I'll have less neck pain from hunching over my work. We are aiming to create a gently sloping spoon bowl that's deepest in the center, not one that's kind of flat on the bottom with steep sides. which wouldn't read as a spoon, and also would be much harder to sand. Notice that when I'm carving, I often stop and feel the surface of my spoon bowl with my non-carving hand. I'm looking for high spots that need to be carved further to make a smooth curve with no bumps or ditches. It took me about 7 minutes to rough carve my spoon bowl. We'll switch to a whisper fine grit sphere burr to smooth the rough marks made by our coarse grit rotosaw roughing burr. This smoothing of the spoon bowl took me about 4 minutes. I folded a strip of 80 grit sandpaper into thirds and then started sanding the spoon bowl by hand, working to get rid of high and low spots and to create a smooth surface. I wear gloves on my hand when I'm sanding because the sandpaper is actually touching my skin, and I have inadvertently sanded right through my skin in the past. Again, you can see me use my non-carving hand to feel for spots that need more work. Sometimes I even close my eyes when I do this to give me better sensitivity. This sanding of the spoon bowl took me about 9 minutes. We'll switch to a coarse bud-shaped burr for the initial shaping of our spoon handle and for the back of the spoon bowl. A burr with a flat area, like this one has, is good for carving on the edges of wood, as sphere-shaped burrs can behave unpredictably in situations like this. You can begin to round your spoon handle with your spoon bowl secured in a bench vise. But if you do this, make sure to pad the clamp edges with foam or cloth so they don't mar your carved spoon face. I've changed my carving pillow out for a block of wood here that will prop my spoon up at an angle that gives me good access to where I need to carve, and I'm able to hold my spoon far enough from where I'm carving that there's no danger to my fingers. It took me about 4 minutes to carve the front of my spoon handle. Continue using the coarse bud to shape the back of the spoon bowl. I'll use a vise to hold the spoon handle for carving half of the job, and then I'm going to carve the other half without a vise, again using a block of wood to prop the spoon at a good angle. I'm doing this just to sort of compare the two different ways of doing this carving, and just to show you that either way works just fine. It took me about 12 minutes to carve each half of the bowl back, making the full shape take about 24 minutes. Now we'll carve the transition between the spoon bowl and the handle. You can get creative here with your design choice, but I opted for a simple, smooth transition. This shaping took about 5 minutes. Now we'll switch to a whisper fine grit burr with a ball nose shape to smooth our rough carving. Any burr with a flat surface would be good for this job. This took about 10 minutes. Okay, time to sand the handle and back of the spoon with 80 grit sandpaper. I wrapped my sandpaper around a flat block of wood so that I'd be sanding down high spots and work towards a nice, smooth surface without high bumps or low troughs. I switched to a foam sanding block after I'd sanded out most of the high spots because it's much less annoying to use. In my own spoon making, I nearly always use some type of power sander for my initial sanding. I use belt sanders, random orbital sanders, and other specialty sanders. Look around and you'll find that there are many products out there that will save you time in the early stages of sanding. I then always switch to hand sanding with the higher grits of sandpaper later in the process. Sanding the handle and back of the spoon bowl took me 25 minutes. My hand got really sore doing that. I wanted to smooth the spoon a bit more, so I sanded the entire spoon with 120 grit sandpaper, which took another 7 minutes. Feel free to sand to higher grits if you prefer a smoother surface. Time to finish the spoon. First, wipe or vacuum all sawdust off of your spoon. Then pour a few teaspoons of Bumbleshoot wood serum into the spoon bowl, and then apply it to the entire surface of the spoon liberally using a soft cloth or a shop paper towel. Wipe off the excess serum. I use squares that I cut from my old t-shirts to do work like this. Let the serum dry for 20 minutes. I'm using this really janky DIY drying rack that I made, but it does a great job. You can use a second coat of serum on your spoon if it looks dry and thirsty. This serum will add beauty and durability to your spoon. Apply wood conditioner with a cloth and gently buff the surface of your spoon. This is a top coat that will seal in hydration and prevent cracking and moisture penetration of your wood. You can recoat your spoon whenever it begins to look dry or dull. So we have gone from starting with a lollipop-shaped piece of wood and through the work of our hands, turned it into a beautiful and shapely maple spoon that we can use in our own kitchens or give to someone as a gift. So to me, this feels like the first step on a pathway that you could explore for years and years. To me, spoons feel like small sculptures. And imagine the possibilities with a simple spoon. Your future spoons could be larger than this, smaller than this. This is a very flat spoon. Perhaps you make future ones that have a lot of curviness to them. You might add color with paints or dyes. Maybe you could add carved texture or carved figurative elements in the handle or the bowl of the spoon. I just feel like there's so much potential with spoon making, and I'm so glad that you started down this pathway. You can find links to the burrs and products we've used in carving our spoons together below. And I've also included a link to my website where you can look at some of the sculptural spoons that I've carved over the last 15 years. Thanks for coming along on this spoon carving journey. I hope you had a great time with it. And if you find yourself like me getting kind of obsessed with spoon carving, I can just tell you it's a pretty great pathway to go down. And enjoy your road.